You went to Cambridge University.
Yeah, I did.
Nice.
I did, yeah. We're academically bright, practically dim. People want the glory.
But not the
Not the process, not the work, not the responsibility.
Yeah.
Generational curses are a real thing, are real. And somebody in the line has to be like, I have to do something about this so that things can change.
I know if I don't do this, my family's gonna carry on suffering.
And my parents, they sacrificed everything, Aahliyah. And that was the first time I think I really deeped, like I really understood, like, wait, we really don't have money. Girl, you should have told me we were gonna cry up in here. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. It's heavy. Let me tell you that for free. And it's only gonna get heavier.
Thank you in advance for listening, because it means that my confidence grows. Thank you for subscribing, because it means that I get to share more. And thank you for commenting, because it means that I get to listen to you. And thank you in advance for sharing, because that's confirmation that we inspired you to inspire others. I pray that you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed creating it. This is the Promisingpreneur podcast. I am Aahliyah Amerat, and right now I'm here with a beautiful woman, a powerhouse to say the least, Nissy Tee. Hello, my love.
Hi, that was such a nice intro. Thank you. She called me a powerhouse.
Oh,
yes,
powerhouse, because girl, you do the power class.
No, yes, this is true. This is true. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, by the way.
Thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
And we're filming on one of the most ridiculous days because there's a whole strike out there.
Listen, there's a whole show. That's what I was even asking you. So, how long are we going to be here for? Because I'm not trying to miss my train back home. You know, not living in London problems. That's really what it is. You know,
mean,
but
it's good.
it's all good.
You got the greenery.
Yeah, literally, and the fresh air. I'm sorry,
Right.
but London, yeah, fresh air is all good. So it's worth it. It's worth it.
I know.
Yeah.
So I want to start by saying you are a powerhouse to say the least.
Thank you.
Right? You run a couple different businesses that are growing. And I've also just found out some really interesting information, and we're going to go right into it, right? So
Oh,
this
Lord.
whole conversation is about creatives and
Yeah.
creative entrepreneurs being able to reach their £100,000 or $100,000 mark. So in terms of revenue within their businesses,
Yeah.
how a creative goes from being a creative to making real money consistently, right? Now, the information that I just found out about you that I didn't actually know, which is probably my bad, but you went to Cambridge University.
Yeah, I did.
Nice.
I did, yeah.
So, smart ass to say the least.
Oh my gosh. Listen, do you know what is so funny though? I always say, one of my friends actually that also studied at Cambridge, she used to say this all the time. She used to say, we've got how do you even say it? We're academically bright, practically dim. Because I feel like, when you have that academia side, you can be super, super book smart. But sometimes common sense is just, sometimes I feel sorry for my husband. He just looks at me like, did you even hear what you said? So yeah, so bright to some degree, but other things, sometimes it takes me a bit longer. Like, you know.
That's literally the lines of questions that I was actually going to ask you. So one thing that I've realized with just being alive, I guess, is when I speak to creative people that are more book smart, right? Common sense isn't the most common thing.
It's so real. Yeah.
And you go into Cambridge.
Yeah.
What I want to know is a little bit of inside information. You go into Cambridge. Was it any different? Was it any different you learning from that kind of educational institute, an educational institute that is way more kind of established in a sense and has a, I don't even know what to call it, but is essentially a bit more upper echelon. Yeah. Right? So going to university of that stature, did you learn things, i.e. life skills, that you use today in business? Yeah. And would you say that going there gave you a different kind of advantage in comparison to maybe somebody that went to a normal school or a normal university?
That's such a good question. In terms of skills, absolutely. So I went into Cambridge to study English literature. Now that's something that I made a decision from when I was like in year 2. literally in year 2. So for anyone that's kind of viewing, maybe that's abroad or whatever, that's like not kindergarten, it's like the second one after that, I think. I think it is. I'm not too sure, but it's basically when you are year 2, you are about 7 years of age. I always knew that I wanted to study English literature for as long as possible, or just English as a whole for as long as possible. I was that kid that, do you remember back in the day when we used to have the computers with the fat back, like the white computers? And then, you know, when it used to be AOL loading, it would go do-do-do-do, do-do-do. Literally, I still remember the sound in my head, like till this day. But back then when we had those computers, I just remember I would sit down on that computer, because obviously internet was sometimes a struggle, and I come from a very working class background, so it was very, very limited. So I would just sit there and open up Word document and just write stories. Like, I loved literature, I loved reading. I have literally read every single Harry Potter book, the whole collection. I read every, do you remember Tracy Beaker?
Y'all love Tracy Beaker.
Listen. Oh, all of the books, you know, they actually made Jacqueline Wilson, a physical book collection. Read every single one of them. Narnia, all of by C.S. Lewis, read all of them. So I've always been like a bookworm, someone that loves stories and loves going into a different world, you know, from, you know, reading literature and stuff. So I always knew that I wanted to study English literature, or English as, you know, as far as possible. Then the older I got, it just became more and more appealing, and then ended up at Cambridge. Now, connecting it now to business, right? I 100% say that it was the best degree for me to ever do. So just for a bit of context for people that might not know. So I have the Power Class, as you mentioned before, which is a women's personal development platform. Literally, our tagline is helping women reclaim their power. It is just all about reminding women of who they are and who they've always been. Powerful, able to do anything, no limitations, fearless, bold. That's, you know, that's something that I would say that I've developed over the years, and it has literally opened up every door and every opportunity that I've had, right? So I wanted to help women to have the same zeal for life, and the same just, I can do whatever I want. Even if it's I'm going to be a stay-at-home mum, I can be the best stay-at-home mum for my children that I can be. Or even if it is I'm going to go and run a business, a Fortune 500 or whatever, you can be the best at that. Now, with the Power Class, you obviously, you know, I have a team now, so I'm working with different types of people. English literature taught me communication. It taught me, you know, even little things that we might not think about, but contracts, for example, you know, even written communication. With the Power Class as well, we create content. And initially, as you probably know, when you first start running a business, you're doing everything. You are admin, you're the content creator, you're the videographer, you're the editor, you're basically everything. So I had to have all of these skills, and English literature, studying English, taught me all of that. I can communicate well. I can write copy well. You know, copy in the social media world is literally things like captions, etc. And then that branches into my second business, which is NT Media, which is my social media management and branding agency. We do a whole bunch of stuff: videography, photography, social media management, branding. And again, all of the things that I said for the Power Class, I needed for NT Media as well. So for me personally, a lot of people kind of be like, English lit, and then you went into business. For me, it was just like as though, you know, I'm a person of faith. So for me, I just feel like it was just like God just knew, like, you needed this so that you can communicate with people properly and you can build relationships with that.
What was Cambridge's part to play in all of that?
I would say...
So why not UCL?
I'll say a couple of things. Cambridge was never my first option. I didn't even think about Cambridge. Not because I didn't think that I could do it, but because it just wasn't on the radar. There's this, you know, I'm this young black girl who lives in East London, comes from a very working class family, who is basically like, comes from poverty. Let's just be real, like literally, you know, and we'll probably dive into that a little bit later. But, you know, there was no one that could come to me and be like, oh, by the way, you know that you're really smart, you can go to Cambridge. It just wasn't a thing. Again, not because I didn't believe that I could do it, but because it just wasn't in my vicinity. You know, it's just something that I didn't think about. So I actually was meant to go to Loughborough. I applied for Loughborough because, again, I looked at, you know, where English literature ranked on there, like on the tables and stuff. It looked pretty good. I applied for Loughborough, Nottingham, a couple of other unis as well, Warwick, I think a few other ones. And I was very content. Loughborough was the one, very, very content. Myself and my best friend, who has now passed away, but I've actually spoken about that quite a lot. But we both were like, yeah, it's okay. It's been quite a few years now, like 8 years now. But I always talk about her because without her, I wouldn't be here today, honestly. But we both were meant to go to Loughborough together. So we were happy, you know, everything was fine. And then down the line, I had a teacher that taught me, was it sociology? Miss McCarthy taught me sociology. She was amazing. She ends up watching this, Miss McCarthy, legend. And she was the one person who looked at me, looked at my grades, looked at the way that I was, and she literally was like, you know that you could go to somewhere like Cambridge or Oxford? You could go to Oxbridge, as they call it. And I was like, really? Like, okay. Again, not because I didn't think I could do it, but just because it's not something you talk about. Like, you live in East London. You don't know what you don't know, you know? You don't know what you don't know, literally. And then when she said that, everything changed. And I was like, I could go to Cambridge. And then the seed was planted. And she literally like held my hand through the entire process and was like campaigning for me, basically. You are going to end up, because, you know, you have to choose Oxford or Cambridge. You can't apply to both. I chose Cambridge, and she held my hand throughout. So that is how Cambridge happened. It wasn't because I was like, yeah, you know, I want to go to somewhere where there's loads of, you know, certain types of people that I can connect. It literally happened because somebody saw me and saw what I was potentially capable of and pushed me. And so I was like, okay, let me try, and ended up getting in. So
thank you, Miss McCarthy.
Thank you, Miss McCarthy. Literally.
So Cambridge's part to play in you being the woman you are today. What is that? What was that?
Oh, so much. Being more disciplined, because I studied English literature, one of the hardest degrees, at Cambridge. Literally, studying English literature meant every single week you were doing at least 2 to 3 essays per week. Not per term, not per, you know, couple of weeks, per week. And then you also had to sit in what they call supervisions, whereby you sit in a room, kind of like this, with either one other person, so your supervisor, so let's say you're my supervisor, you're the person that kind of oversees the degree that I'm doing, and then maybe one other person, and you will sit there and they will ask you questions about the book that you're supposed to be reading that week, and you'll have to have a conversation about it, an intellectual, in-depth conversation about it, by the way, and you'll be asked about your opinions, your thoughts, about different themes and all this different stuff, so you couldn't hide. So it meant that the books that you have to read, and by the way, there was a new text to read every single week. So with the first week, guys, I remember, oh my God, Aahliyah? I remember the first ever week that I went there, the book that I got was a book by George Eliot called Middlemarch. Fat book like this, probably 800 pages. That was my first week at Cambridge. And we had to finish that book in a week and then write an essay about it in that week. And then you also had a secondary essay, which was like about like secondary sources, and because they have the literature part, but then they also have the theoretical part. So where you have to basically pull apart ideas and theories and theology and that sort of thing. So that was my life for 3 whole years. You're telling me that you're going to come out of that, not be disciplined? Yeah, different level of discipline when you come out. Now I can work at a rate that most people can't. Now I can produce, for example, now it's more content, right? Because aside from my 2 businesses, I also have my own personal brand. So I work with brands and stuff as well. I'm just able to work at a different capacity and rate to a lot of people. So I'll definitely have to put that down to Cambridge. And also just my ability to go into any room and be comfortable, because I was very uncomfortable, because you go to somewhere like Cambridge where at the time is definitely improved now. But at the time, I think black people made up about 0.01% of the population. It was something ridiculous. Like, it was like minute, you know. So I would go into some lectures. I was the only black person. I would go into supervisions. I'm the only black person. I would go into, we also had like, I forgot what they're called now, but like smaller sessions. So they're not supervisions, but smaller, intimate, more intimate sessions with like 6, 7 people in the room that are also on your course. Only black person. And though some people will be like, oh, it's not, you know, a big deal, whatever. As a young woman growing up who's come from East London, where it's very multicultural, very diverse, and then you're lumped in somewhere like Cambridge where not even just that, but then you're talking to people and people like, I've gone to private school and, you know, have basically been trained up their whole entire life to be at somewhere like Cambridge, you can easily feel out of place. But it showed me that if I can survive this, I can go anywhere. Put me I don't know, take me to China and put me in a room with a whole bunch of Chinese people, I will be able to work the room and I'll communicate and I'll get on with them. Put me in a room with a whole bunch of white people, I know how to work the room. So I would say those two things, which are so key for entrepreneurship, because you have to be able to connect with people. You have to be able to network, meet new people, put yourself in very uncomfortable situations in order for you to get ahead. So yeah, Cambridge definitely gave me a lot of stuff. Yeah.
That is 100% facts. 100% facts, which is actually like, I love that you was able to learn that. But you see, that information, that privileged information, because essentially it's privileged information.
Yeah.
If you are smart enough to get to somewhere like Cambridge or Oxford, you get taught these very, very valuable, like so crucial elements of life.
Yeah.
And anyone that, essentially that's what my whole company CREATALAND that I'm building is all about, is to be able to provide that privileged information to creators, because most creatives are not book smart. No, I wouldn't even say most creators, a lot of creators are not book smart, and because they're not book smart, they don't have the opportunities to go into places that will give them that privileged information. So if you've never been around it, so as you said before, you don't know what you don't know. You come up from East London. All the people around you essentially are working class, impoverished backgrounds. For you to be able to understand how to network, how to navigate the room, how to communicate, all of those things, even though you were smart, if you didn't see it, you was never going to do it.
Yeah.
The fact, like, you didn't see Cambridge, you didn't see Oxford as even a possibility, so you didn't even apply.
Exactly.
Until somebody was able to pick that out of you and say, actually, Nissy, you got this.
Yeah.
Like, I want to support you and go into somewhere that you actually should be.
Essentially.
So that's amazing. I'm very happy that Miss McCarthy was able to spot that in you.
And by the way, as well, Miss McCarthy was a middle-aged, I think she was even past like middle-aged, small white lady. So I think, you know, just to kind of go back a little bit as well, I don't want people to think that you also can't connect or learn from people who are different to you. 100%. You know, you can do that in any context. But, you know, this middle-aged white lady saw me and was like, this girl's got something. And so she definitely changed the game for me. But even in that, I think that I had to give her something to use. 100%. You know, and I love I had to show up. And I love what you said about, you don't know what you don't know, but also, you know, if you don't have the privilege of getting certain, like maybe access to certain things, you also might not show up accordingly. If you don't know how to network, you're not going to show up accordingly. So there could even be opportunities there lurking, but you could miss it because you don't have that. And I think if I even go back further, I have to thank my parents for that. Especially my dad, even though at some point, Lord have mercy, me and my dad did not get along. Like, we clashed, we butted heads, like, oh Lord, my dad was so strict and we didn't get along for a very, very long time. But I have to now, looking back, I'm like, I'm so grateful for the way that he raised me, because that strict, like, you know, already instilled some level of discipline and that kind of focus on academia, because who was going out where? While my other friends were like, oh yeah, we're going to a party. What party? Where? You think my dad would not drag me? Like, that was never going to happen. So I'm also grateful for that. And so it meant that I read a lot. And with reading, honestly, for anyone that even like is questioning, like, so how do I even build my communication skills? Read. Reading, there's nothing, I don't care what it is, there's nothing that beats reading. It develops just just being able to even speak in situations like this. Why am I able to speak so confidently, eloquently, or, you know, switch it up? When I'm with my friends, I speak a particular way. When I'm with other people, I know how to call it code switching. I just call it a part of life. Like, it just is.
Anyone that has a problem with code switching needs to
get it together.
Get it together. Unfortunately, that is what life is. You do it without you even realising. You code switch all the time.
Absolutely.
So if you seem to think that you ain't going to be code switching, you got another thing coming.
Yeah.
Like, if you look in the mirror, you realise that you're code switching.
Absolutely.
Just sort it out.
I think do you know what? I think it's more people getting upset about feeling like they can't be themselves, which I get. Like,
but you are different people at all different
times. And I think this is what people struggle with. You can still be the same person, carry the same principles, the same essence, same beliefs, still what you stand for, but still know that context is important. Just
context is the only thing that matters.
And just like, for example, I know that this is so dramatic, but this is the only way I feel like people get this in their head, yeah? Is like, I'm not going to go into church or a mosque in a bikini. Why? Because I recognize that is not appropriate. Do you know what I mean? It's not appropriate. Literally not appropriate. So I know that I am not going to go and meet an MP and start talking to them anyhow. Because, Wagwan, what's going on, fam? Like, I'm talking to my friend. Do you know what is so funny? I don't even talk to my parents the same way that I talk to my friends.
But you don't. Of course you don't.
But I don't know. People have like a weird thing about it. Like, and they're so upset about it.
That's code switching.
It really is. Because I'm not going to go and talk in like colloquialisms like I do with my friends. To my parents will be looking at me like, huh? First of all, because of culture, respect, certain things like that. I'm not going to go and be like, yo, to my, obviously now I'm older, I joke around with my parents. But on a normal one-to-one, I'm not going to be like, oh, what's going on, fam? To my dad. He'll be looking at me like, have you been smoking something? Or like, is everything okay? But you code switch because, again, context is everything. And I think even that, I learned that very early on, again, in my journey, especially at Cambridge, that there's context to this. And I know that if I want to get ahead, there are some things that I'm going to have to do. Again, not removing who I am, but making sure that I understand the context of what has been constructed around me. Yeah. You know, but yeah, I don't even know how we even got into that. But
no, I can't remember. It's so
yeah,
it's so important. Like, it's so important. So you said a couple of things about your dad.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah. You said a couple of things, and I want to touch on them. You said that your dad was really strict. Yeah. And that essentially was the beginning part of your discipline.
Yeah.
That was you learning, right? In hindsight.
Yeah, in hindsight, definitely.
At the time you didn't know it was learning.
Yeah.
Or gearing you up for Cambridge, right? What would you say you had to go through? What was the experience what was the feelings and the experiences that you had to go through with not getting along with your dad, that even allowed you to carry on with doing what you're doing? Because so the reason why I asked that is because I know that if I was told something by my parents that I didn't want to do or I didn't like to do, there was a good few times that I would completely rebel against it, regardless of my culture and regardless of my respect for them, because I highly respect my parents. However, there were certain times that I was so far up my own backside that I was like, no, I'm not listening to that.
Yeah. Why am I not surprised?
I'm not going to tell you that I'm not going to listen to that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to sneak off and I'm going to do what I want to do.
Right.
And I did that. Would you say why did you listen all the time? Even though, like you said to me a little bit earlier that you love talking and you could have been a lawyer. Like, that was your first point. Yeah, you potentially could have been a lawyer. So for somebody to be a lawyer or even have that in their mind, they have to be opinionated and strong-minded.
Right.
And you are.
Right. Absolutely.
So you being opinionated and strong-minded, I'm pretty sure at 2 years old, you was definitely the same Nissy.
Yeah.
So when your dad turned around and told you certain things, tell me an experience that essentially changed things for you. I
would say I have so many. Too many, I would say, actually. Too many. And you know what? It's nice that I can talk about this now because me and my dad are like completely different place now. He is literally like, I love him, I adore him, he's amazing. And I there's definitely some things that I think he could have done differently, but I understand why he did what he did. So I'll kind of like even take it a step back to in a very simplified way as to why I didn't rebel was because I was scared of my dad. That's me just being very, very real. I was scared, and when I say scared, terrified of my dad. Many things that I don't necessarily want to go into just because it's not between me and him, it's between like him and my mum. But just picture this, right? You're growing up in a household where your dad is very African And there's a lot of African mentality, i.e. the woman does certain things and the man does certain things. And whatever the man says goes. And if the man decides that this is how we're going to do things, that is it. My dad was very academic. My dad finished university early. He finished when he was 19. He graduated very early, finished when he was 19. And then by the time he was 19, 20, was lecturing people who were older than him at university. That is the level of intelligence that my dad has and had. And I feel like, unfortunately, because of just circumstances, situations, he didn't get to fulfill that potential. So he even came to the country. He, very, very humble job. He was a postman for over 15 years, then decided to quit and go back to study. He's now only wrapping up his studies and stuff, but now he's in his 60s. And I would say that he definitely was a dreamer and always spoke about the type of life that he wanted.
If you're enjoying this podcast so far, this is only going to annoy you if you're a hater. Click subscribe, click follow, and drop a quick comment. And if you've done all of those already, then send me a 5-star review, because honestly, it's the only way we survive on the internet. Thank you.
Fast forward now, I did want to be a lawyer at some point, but then I kind of realized, do you know what? This feels like a bit boring. Like I knew that I love talking to people. I love conversations. I love storytelling. I love hearing people's stories. So then I started getting to a place where I was like, what could I be? Oh, okay, I want to be a presenter, whatever. So looked at the one person that everybody knew, Oprah. So I was like, I think I want to be like Oprah, right? Because she's the one black woman that was making it on TV, apart from the June Sarpongs and those sort of people. But Oprah was like the one. So when I was about 15, I kind of was like, yes, I want to go into I want to be a presenter. Then I just happened to find some radio course basically happening in East London that was free at the time, because honestly, I got to thank God, because at the time there were a lot of free projects and stuff for young people, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds. So I joined the course. So I started doing this presenting course, radio course, started learning about radio and stuff. Then as we went down the line, I think I was about 16, I came back home and my parents were in the living room, right? Very silent as it was, because there wasn't really relationship there. It was just kind of two people that are just there because, again, very, very common in the African community. My parents had just kind of sat there, and then I came and sat down, and my dad must have asked me so, and he wasn't looking at me, by the way. He just sat there as he does, asked me, so what are you even doing with yourself? What do you want? What are you doing? And I remember being turning to my mum and kind of being oh, I want to be a broadcast journalist because I wanted to make it sound nicer. Then I want to have a dream that probably millions of other people in the world have, of being a presenter, a TV presenter, a host, or whatever you want to call it. So I tried to make it sound good. I said, I want to be a broadcast journalist. And my mum was like, oh, that sounds good. My mum always been my number one supporter. Love her to bits. My dad didn't even look at me. He just went, why do you want to go and do that? There's no money in that. You think you can go and do that? Just go and start looking for something that will actually pay you. And in that moment, I looked over at him, so disinterested, so disconnected from my dreams, the things that I wanted to do. And I remember in that moment, I rebelled, but in a different way. I rebelled internally, where I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to show you that I can do this. I'm going to show you that I can make something of myself that's different to what you think I need to be, rather than saying, again, typical African household, doctor, lawyer, engineer, those sorts of things. I'm going to prove you wrong. But what I also did in order to keep him happy is I made sure that my academia never slipped. So I came to kind of a compromise with my mum, because even at one point, my mum was saying, you're spending too much time doing this radio stuff. What about school? Blah, 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 blah. Again, that very immigrant mentality, not even just African, but immigrant mentality, where it's education is important. You need to go to school, you need to study so you can get a job, and then you can do this and you can do that. So my mum even started to get concerned at one point. And I remember just saying to her, I was like, Mum, I promise you, if I can keep my grades up, please let me carry on this radio thing. So we came to a compromise. And so I never let my grades slip. I always remained an A-star student, a couple of B's here and there, but we don't talk about that. A-star and A student. And even with my dad, he saw as I was going along this journey, my dad, to be fair, was very quite disconnected from the things that we were doing. He didn't come to any of my school performances, any of my anything, really and truly. He was just kind of there at the time. But then he's the exact same person who years later, when my YouTube channel started to grow, he was telling people like back home, like, yeah, you know, go onto a YouTube channel. Yeah, it's spelled N-I. And I was like, I told you were going to become a believer. I knew it in my head, obviously. I didn't say it at the time. But fear. Ultimately, I say all of that to say fear was what carried me to not rebel in the way that I even saw other people, some of my friends, some of my family members, they rebelled. Like, you know, they wouldn't care. They'll be like, I'm still going to go, even if my parents call. I was so scared of my dad. I was so afraid of him. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. But then at the same time, I look back now and I say, definitely some things I think he could have done differently. Because even there were times where I remember he had friends who would be like, you're so hard on your children. Like, you need to, you know, calm down a little bit. But I'm not going to lie to you, all of his daughters came out amazing. There's 4 of us. So myself, and I've got 3 older sisters, all daughters. No boys, all girls. And we're all amazing. I'm not going to lie to you, all of our heads screwed on. My sister just graduated from university, from Warwick. So bright, intelligent. She's now working for a PR company. She's doing brilliant. My other sister's at university. She finished her first year. She's also got a YouTube channel. She's also like got that kind of academic creativity. My younger sister, also brilliant. Like, and obviously I'm a bit biased because they're my sisters, my siblings. But I see why he also felt like he had to be so hard on us. Because we grew up in an environment where, let's be real, a lot of girls were ending up pregnant really, really young. A lot of people were dropping out of school. A lot of violent crime, knife crime, gun crime. So it could have been very easy for us to fall into those things. So I even think now as an adult, now that I'm married and now thinking about kids, I kind of get it. Because I'm like, you're looking at your kids thinking they could end up anyhow. Look at the environment we grew up in, you know. But it was fear, a lot of fear. A lot. I think too much fear. Definitely could have done with a bit of love and a bit of reassurance, but a lot of fear, and that's what stopped me.
So that's quite interesting because a lot of people's households create fear, right? Would you say that the relationship between your mum and your dad caused or brought up issues for you being the woman that you are and also going into relationships?
That's such a good question. Yes and yes. Yes and yes. So in terms of me, the woman that I am today, the public speaker, the entrepreneur, the content creator, whatever you want to call it, yes, but I would even say maybe slightly in a positive way. Obviously I grew up in a household, like I said before, like, you know, we didn't have much money to the point where, and this was probably 2 stories that I use all the time when I do like any speaking engagements and stuff that literally shifted my entire trajectory in terms of like who I am today. One being, I remember my mum sitting me down one time when we were about 16 years old. And this is where my mum's now starting to talk to me now. She's starting to kind of let me in a bit more. And also I'm starting to realize like some of the brokenness in our home, some of the, now I've recently started doing therapy. So even during therapy, one of the things that my therapist said to me, like the disorganization, like the really disorganized environment that I grew up in, right? But I started to see things. I'm starting to notice like, okay, you know, my parents' relationship is not really like the best and there's tension all the time and it's quite scary being here. And then my mum sat me down one day and she was like, you know, Nissy, if it wasn't for the fact that I could get an overdraft at the bank, like we could live off of an overdraft, we would have to go to a food bank to go and get food. And that was the first time I think I really deeped, like I really understood like, wait, we really don't have money. Like what? Could we be considered poor? I think that's like the first time where I was like, I really think we could be considered poor because I swear only poor people go to the food bank. Like when you literally have no other choice, like nobody wakes up and say, oh, I want to go to the food bank to go and eat today. Like you don't. You do it because you're desperate or because you're at the end and you don't know how you're going to feed your kids. So I looked at my mum and I said, oh my gosh, we're poor. That was number one. The second time was when my little sister, so the third sister, who is now currently just finished first year of uni, she's always been into acting. That's been her thing. She's an actor. She's amazing. So she spent year after year after year in primary school being the lead actor, right? And one time, you know, my mum even asked the teacher, like, why do you keep putting her as the lead? Don't you want to put other kids, like, to make them feel a bit better? Like, because this girl was getting the lead role every single time. And literally the teacher that was managing, like, the acting at the time just said, it's because she's the best. She's literally the best. She was amazing. Now, she was so good that the primary school that she went to was connected to not connected to, but they started making connections with like a drama school, like a West End theatre school, one of the best. I've even forgotten the name. I should actually remember because I tell this story all the time, but one of the best West End schools. And my sister was basically picked out as one of the potential people to come and audition. It was like 3 days intense audition. I was the one that actually took her because, again, immigrant parents, they don't really understand all that kind of stuff. So I took her and she killed it. Like, she smashed it. She was amazing. And so much so, after the 3 days of the audition, like, they're knocking out people, by the way. Different people are like, you know, nope, you can't go through to the next round. She makes it to the final round. She's one of like maybe 5 black kids out of like hundreds of like white kids. And again, people that have money, right? Which unfortunately, you know, tends to be our white counterparts. So all of these kids, she makes it through. They say, do you know what? We want to offer a space at this school. However, there's a fee. This is how much she has to pay. We couldn't afford it. We then go back to them and say, look, we really want her to go to this. So I again, you know, doing what I do as the oldest child, trying to negotiate with them. Oh, she can't, you know, we can't pay this, but is there anything that we can do? Because we know that she would really thrive in this environment. And they said, oh my gosh, you know what? We get it. We can even give her a scholarship and we can half the fee. We still couldn't afford half. In that moment, my little sister's dreams were snatched away. This girl, and these were people like that had kids that had gone on to like go EastEnders and Hollyoaks and like had gone on to do big things, right? Here in the UK, some had traveled abroad and all of this stuff. And I literally saw my little sister's dream be snatched away from her in that moment because of something like money, because of something that literally banks print every day just because. For me, in that moment, I got angry. I literally made a vow to myself and I said, I will never again allow money and finances to be the reason why my siblings, my own flesh and blood, cannot do something. And I think from that moment, everything changed. And I knew that, yes, I can make money, and you can make money from working in a company and being a great employee and working up the ranks and becoming like, you know, the general manager or whatever, regional manager or executive, whatever. But for me, I don't know what it was, but in that moment, I said, I need to do something for myself. This is bigger and I need to create legacy. I need to build an empire. That's when the first words of like empire and legacy started coming up in my head. And that's when everything shifted for me. So I wouldn't even necessarily say it came directly from my parents or my dad, but it came from us not having. And that really, really, really pissed me off. Because me, okay, cool, I can make do. For example, when I was 15, I started working cash in hand jobs. I wasn't legally allowed to work, but I worked because I knew from a very early age that I couldn't always ask my parents for money because I'm asking them for £5 and they're like, oh, I don't have it. £5. How do you not have £5? But that was the reality. So I started working. But now my sisters, listen, I don't like scare people. But there's nothing I would not do for my sisters. They're like because we have quite a bit of an age gap as well. They're like my children. Like, I love them with all my heart. So I don't even know how I'm going to be with my own kids. Because can you imagine? I will snatch someone up for my sisters straight. I will catch a case for my sisters. So I don't even know how I'm going to be with my own kids. But there's nothing I wouldn't do for my siblings. So when I thought about it and I thought that this opportunity wasn't presented, my sister's brilliant. She's talented. She's amazing. And what? Because of money. That created a different beast in me. And that I guess woke something up in me that I've never been able to go back from. And that is what keeps me going every single day. And now I'm in a position, thank God, that I can literally, I even looked at some acting school for my sister and I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, would you want to go to this? And she was like, oh my gosh, I've been looking at it. I was like, okay, apply it and I'll pay for it. That's where I'm at now. But to once upon a time know that I couldn't do anything, that pissed me off so much. So in terms of the business aspect and the businesswoman, that's where it shifted. In terms of relationships now, definitely.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just want to what you just said resonated with me so much to the point where I nearly had tears in my eyes.
I try not to cry myself. I'm trying to hold it in. I'm not going to be that person that comes on here and cries.
What's crazy is that what you've just said is your why.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what every entrepreneur, what every creative entrepreneur, what every person in business needs to have is their dying why. If they don't do it, what's going to happen? Right?
Yep.
But you said two things. The second thing you said about your sister actually triggered me a little bit. But the first thing that you said is very close to what I'd gone through. Right? And
girl, I feel like I'm about to cry now. Why am I about to cry now? But yeah, I don't normally cry when I talk about this, but I think I'm getting emotional because I think this is the first time I've sat down and I've spoken about it in like an intimate setting like this, where I've actually deeped like raw. Like that's actually what I come from. And I'm glad I didn't wear makeup now because I would have been pissed if I did. I would have been pissed. I said I wasn't going to cry. But I think I deep, like this is so much bigger than me. People look at me and think like I'm always like crazy. Like I'm on social media. I'm like, guys, keep going. Because that's a lot of my content, right? Anyone that knows me knows that my content is like very much like keep going. Or why I even have the power class? Maybe because I have girls, my sisters, my mum. So it's majority women that I've been around. But they don't deep that this is deep for me. Like I look at my mum and I say, I never want you to lack ever in life. Like my mum and my parents, they sacrifice everything, Aahliyah. They sacrifice literally, like I said before, imagine leaving everything you know, all in the name of, I want to give my children the chances that I never had. And then that's why sometimes even it pisses me off when I hear stories of these boys, whether it be like I grew up in East London, so violent crime is very common, where you hear stories. I know boys that I used to see around who died because they got stabbed on the street because of a postcode. And I look at them and I think, so you're telling me that your parents went through everything that they went through, because you know that majority of them are first generation, you know, children of immigrants or even immigrants themselves. You're telling me that your parents went through everything that they went through only for you to go and say, I'm going to die on the streets that have not given me anything, not done anything for me, not impacted my life in any way, right? Because let's be real, when you grow up in the slums, the ghetto, the hood, whatever you want to call it, right? Really and truly, what has that block done for you other than maybe give you, and it's two ways. It could either put you down a path that you shouldn't be going down, or it could give you a sense of, I need to do something different, and that fire and that passion inside of you. For me, thankfully, I looked around at my environment, I looked at what I grew up in, and I said, nah, this ain't for me. I need more, right? But there's so many people that look at that, and then you're doing, I'm riding for ends or just stupidity to die on a road. For what?
Sense of belonging.
I guess so. For family, not having somewhere that you fit in. But I'm just like, you're going to die for that. Not, I'm going to die leaving my family behind something. I'm going to die making sure that my family are good, that they don't ever have to suffer ever again. I'm going to die for, like, I don't know.
Die a martyr.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you know what's like crazy about the whole thing? It's like being, go back a little bit when you were talking about the moment that you realised that you was living off overdraft, right? So in some sense that wasn't a good feeling or a situation for you to be in.
Yeah.
However, you was fortunate enough to not be aware of that detriment until 16 years old. The reason why, when you were saying it, it kind of triggered me is because I knew I was in that position at 8.
Wow.
7, 8.
Wow. Girl, you should have told me we were going to cry up in here. I didn't come prepared for this.
No, I wasn't prepared for this either. But you see, knowing that you're in a position of poverty.
Yeah.
And knowing that you have siblings. that you want to do everything for, so they don't go through that. So you see, that's why I said that. What you said about your sister was triggering, because I've got a younger sister as well, and I tried my best to do everything for her. Give her anything she needed, everything she wanted. Give her birthdays when our parents couldn't, like, give her birthdays. Like, allow her to have a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that sense of being older, because there's what, 8 years, 7, 8 years, but I think 7.
Are you the older sibling as well? Yeah.
Oldest. So it's that
different burden as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like second parent, mate.
Is that feeling of kind of responsibility, right? I feel like as entrepreneurs, it's our thank you.
Man. Oh, thank you.
While we are up here
doing the most. I really didn't think that this was going to be me today. I'm so glad I didn't wear makeup. Lord.
Like the fact that we have this sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Right? And I urge people that have, even though it's trauma, even though it's difficult, using that as your fuel
absolutely
at all times. Because I believe that, even, like, not saying that you have to come from poverty or you have to come from adversity to be able to make something of yourself. No, that's not what I'm saying. However, there is something in your life that's deep that you can hone in on. Like when people are trying to search for the why, or trying to search for the reason why they get up in the mornings and they do what they're doing, or they're feeling down and out because nothing's working or whatever it may be. There's been so many times that I've had to deal with shit not working.
Yeah.
Right? Not working, being triggered, like things just going wrong all the time. And it's those moments, is being able to reflect on the fact that I know if I don't do this, my family's going to carry on suffering.
Absolutely.
Every single one of them. And someone in the generation has to be the martyr.
Yep.
And I feel like that's what we have very much in common.
Yeah.
Being the older siblings, being feeling that sense of responsibility, and then realizing what poverty really is.
Really is, yeah.
Because talk about food banks. I had to go to food banks. My mum had to do that, right? And the worst part about it is the anger I felt towards my dad's side of the family. Not even my dad's side of the family, but my dad's side, that was just a little bit more well off, and has never experienced that. But one day I'm in a room and we've got a whole table full of food, and then the next day there's nothing in the fridge.
Wow.
And I'd go from house to house, and I'd have to, and I'd see, and you see what Cambridge taught you in terms of adapting and code switching. I learnt that in my house.
Wow.
I learnt that because I had to code switch from my mum's to my dad's. I had to understand the context. I had to understand the broken relationships between my mum and, say, like, partners, or like my sister's dad, or whatever it may be. I had to understand what she was going through. And then I went to my dad's side and see full-on family relationships. A mum, a dad, husband and wife, like grandparents, uncles, aunties, this, that, like. But then on my mum's side, there was none of that.
Wow.
Like, that code switching, I learned, and I was able to adapt in very different environments. Like, if you was to put me in the middle of Singapore, in the middle of China, in front of wholly for Chinese people, I can navigate. And the maddest part about it is I put myself in that situation.
Yeah.
I went to China for a month, and I sat there by myself and navigated my way through
That
China.
is amazing.
I did that.
Wow.
And it was being able to use my experience to adapt.
Right.
And that's what you learned in Cambridge, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many different ways that you can learn that. And I feel like creatives, or people that are trying to be entrepreneurs and trying to be in business, or trying to change the way that they do things and change the trajectory of their lives and generational wealth and all that kind of stuff. Everyone wants to talk about all of this stuff.
Yeah.
However, it's what drives you the most, that makes you flipping quiet on camera from nowhere.
Come on to Aaliyah's podcast, and when this was not planned, and cry, man.
What is that?
Yeah.
What conversations can you have that triggers you so much that you can hone in on and say, this is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing?
Right.
Because if you get emotional about something, you need to tap into that a lot more. Most people won't tap into it because they're scared of getting emotional and letting it out. Which is why the potential of you being the best business owner or best entrepreneur lacks and fails, because you're not willing to go through the self-therapy. You're not willing to go through that and open up old wounds, but those old wounds will propel you.
And isn't it funny how we both have, like, you know, again, similar like upbringing and stuff in relation to like growing up very working class, etc. But how both of those things were I guess the almost like the switch, the pivotal moments that have basically forced us into a place of, nah, this ain't it. I have to do more.
By any means.
By any means. Literally, you know how, 50 Cent, get rich or die trying? Like, that's my life. I'm going to die trying. I'm going to do whatever I need to do, because this is where I've come from. And there's no way I can turn back. And it's funny because that can't be taught to some people. I think there's different ways of getting it, but that can't be taught. I even remember the other day, I was on Instagram Live. I think it was even on Monday morning. I was on Instagram Live, and I was doing I've started doing this thing like every Monday, start the week with me, and like getting like us pumped up and blah blah blah. Then someone must have asked a question just as I was coming towards the end, and they were like, oh, but what if, in your 27 years you've been working and nothing is working out? Like, literally, they wrote like a whole whatever, nothing's been working, blah 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 blah. And for the first time, I kind of just sat there. Normally I'll give like a whole spiel about, keep going, you've got to. And I just went, do you know what? Just quit. And I literally looked into the camera and I was like, because you know what, guys, I've come to the point where I'm like, either people are going to do it or you're not. Because there's some things that are inside of me that I can't teach you. No. I just can't. Because this comes from more than just, I want to make money. This comes from, like you rightfully said, and I love how you put it. You literally said, if somebody in the line, because this is a generational thing, right? Generational poverty, generational curses are a real thing, are real. And somebody in the line has to be like, I have to do something about this so that things can change. I have chosen to be that person. And so I can't teach that to you if that's not your experience. You might have other things, but I can't teach that to you. And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, if you have not decided, because it is a decision, 100%. If you have not decided that the only outcome that is possible for you, regardless of what happens, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of the fact that you might be on your third business and it's failed, and now you're about to go into your fourth business, unless you have decided that either way, I don't know how, I don't know where, but I'm going to make it, I'm going to be successful, you will fail. Because that's it, time and time again, because you have already decided that, oh, but I've tried and it's not working. Then keep going. You failed, okay, you fell and you get back up again and you keep going until, people don't realize this, right, with me, but there is no option for me to fail. And I know that might sound mad, and some people will be like, what, so you're going to keep going for the next 10, 20 years, even if I will keep going for the next 10, 20 years. I've been doing this for 10 years plus now. And I've fallen and I've gotten back up. I even had another business, I didn't even tell you, but I had another business that I dissolved because I technically, quote unquote, failed. But guess what? I learned from it. I said, okay, that didn't work in that period. Let me go and try something else. I pivoted. But other people will be like, oh, this didn't work. Oh, do you know what? Can't do it no more. It's not for me. Do you know what?
I've dissolved.
I'm done.
How many businesses?
Oh, listen. So I'm
dissolving a business is like eating sweets, right?
Literally, it's like, okay, next one. Next one. But I think I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, okay, quit then. But one thing I always say, and this is something that I talk about even the first couple of weeks of the Power Class program, right? Because through the Power Class, we have events, but we also have a 12-week program that we do for like specifically to kind of hone in on skills, and we break it down into like 3 parts. So we have personal development and confidence, we have social media marketing and branding, and then we have business and finance, right? Just helping women to be all-round bosses. That's like the idea. One of the things in the initial parts in the personal development and confidence aspect that we talk about, I talk about mindset, and I talk about a lot about the fact that I get people to do an activity, right? In the middle of the page, and people listening might want to do this at home, but in the middle of the page, you put a line through the page, and you basically put on the left-hand side the consequences of inaction, and then on the right-hand side, the consequences of action. So you might have dreams of, you know, making money or whatever it is. And the consequences of action, or I think it's action first, but action could be buying my mum a house, making sure my mum can retire, making sure blah, blah, blah. All of the stuff, right? All of the reasons why you would want to do what you do. Then the consequences of inaction. If I don't do this, what are the possible consequences? My family remains in generational poverty. We don't have this. My children won't have the opportunities that they want. I want my children to be knowing what 5-star is from young. I want them to know that you know, if they need anything, no boy or woman or whatever will flatter them to make them feel like, oh, because they can buy them a Chanel bag. No, darling, you can get access to anything you want. I want my kids to say if they want to go and become an actor, they can go and do that because we have access to wealth, right? It's bigger than me. This is the thing. So now in my consequences of inaction column, that means that all of the opportunities may never happen. My mum may never retire. This, that, all of that stuff. I literally say to people, if you are okay with all of the consequences of inaction, and you are okay with that, you know that one day when your child is asking you, Mom, you know, what did you ever want to be? What did you want to do? And you are happy that you can look at your child in the eye and you can say to them, oh, well, you know, I dreamt of doing this, but I just quit. I never did it. If you are happy with that, keep going, quit. But if you know that there is something inside of you that goes, I don't want to have that conversation with my children. I don't want to know that I die and my parents are left with nothing. I don't want to know that my siblings are still struggling. I don't want to know that my great-great-grandchildren have nothing because their great-great-grandma or great-great-granddad didn't want to put in the work. If you then are, you're not content with that, you better keep going. Because those are the people that are relying on you. But a lot of people don't look at it like that, or don't even take the time out to self-assess, self-analyze, and to actually just write down these things. Because when it's in your head, it's harder to process, right? Because life happens and your boyfriend broke up with you and this happened and this and then. It's easy to let life get on top of you.
I always say that. Life always
happens. It does.
Because, like, life happens.
It does. And you can't stop it from happening. You can't. And sometimes you will have a crappy day, and even I still have it, where I have a crappy day where I wake up and I'm like, why am I even doing this? This is long. Yeah. It's hard. I'm tired. My husband, bless him, he has the amount of times I've had breakdowns where I'm just crying. And I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this. And I'm crying.
Oh, no. My partner sees it all the time.
Oh, you're just like,
once a week.
We can't do it.
Once a week.
Standard. At least.
Standard.
I'm like, I'm overwhelmed. I can't do it. Why am I doing this? This is too much. Because it is. It's heavy.
It's heavy.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. It's heavy. Let me tell you that for free. And it's only going to get heavier because the more success we have, the more responsibility, the more people you have to pay, the more people you've got to... Listen, it's only going to get heavier. But I know why I'm doing this. And a lot of people, because they haven't even taken out the time to write, what am I doing this for? What does it look like if I don't do this?
Yeah. And that exercise is so crucial, right? Is forget everyone, because everyone talks about the success. What happens when I get the success? Oh my God, I want this, I want that, I want this. Okay, cool, that's fine. If you don't, what happens?
What happens?
And then also, because I do that exercise quite a lot, but another one that I do is, what assumptions am I making of myself right now?
Okay.
To do something and to not do something. Right? So same kind of concept. You write down on a sheet of paper, good assumptions, bad assumptions, right? In the good assumptions, and this is something that recently I was working with one of my coaches, and she just mentioned it again, like for me to do, which is something that I kind of used to do when I do like on a yearly basis, you know, when you go through the whole,
okay,
goals, do my goals, and
this,
there's a particular way that I reverse engineer goals, right?
Same, yeah.
So in terms, she was like to me, write on a piece of paper, and she done this exercise with me, and it was a lot more easier for me to do it with somebody than it was doing it by myself, because I just couldn't, even though I'm still talking to her, asking me the question allows me to think about it.
Absolutely,
kind of just the way that I work, essentially. So she asked me, what assumptions are you making that are good, and what assumptions are you making that are bad? And all of the bad assumptions may be that I'm going to fail because I failed in the past. I can't do this because I don't have an Instagram following. I can't do this because I don't feel confident. I lack self-esteem. And what are the good assumptions? I can do this because, or I have to do this. Actually, no, she actually corrected me when I said have to. She was like, never use the word have to or should, or because she was like, those essentially context, right? Your brain doesn't understand context. Your brain only understands instruction.
Right.
So if you tell your brain, and this is just how our minds work, right? If you say, I can do something, your brain is programmed and it's created to allow your body and your everything about you to start working towards
that. I've been reading a lot about that, like
the
neuroplasticity and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So important.
So it's like if you tell your brain, or you say you should do something, you're telling your brain essentially, if you don't do it, there's going to be a consequence.
Yeah.
Which will put you in a fight or flight mode. And as soon as you're in a fight or flight mode, you're now not creative. You're now shut down. Right?
That's really good.
So you have to allow yourself to come away from the I should be doing this. I have to do this. Because you're giving your brain the instruction of fight or flight. Like, if you don't do this, bitch, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like,
and then you're there too panicked to even move.
Exactly.
You're literally paralysed. That's so good, you know. So whoever your coach is, shout out to them, because that I'm gonna start using that for myself.
But this that wasn't even. I mean, my coach made me do the exercise, but this is actually the reading I've done based on neuroscience.
Neuroscience, yeah.
Because I'm heavily interested in the psychology of
Yeah,
of the
same.
brain.
Yeah.
Everything that I'm about, right?
Yeah.
And I think about because of the fact that I didn't do well in school. I didn't like school, but I liked learning. But that didn't make sense to me, right? It didn't make sense. Like, I don't like school, which is all learning,
right?
But I love learning.
But it's very rigid, isn't it, though?
Precisely.
Yeah.
So that's where I try to understand the psychology of my mind, to try to say, okay, cool. If I like learning, what is it I like about learning?
Right.
If I like learning and like, how do I like learning? What, not the kinesthetic and audio and visual. Forget all of that shit, yeah? What is it that I like about learning? What do I want to learn? What am I interested in? And those are the things that I kind of... those are the things that I look into quite often in my spare time. But going back to the whole assumptions, good assumptions, bad assumptions, on that piece of paper, on my bad assumptions, I write all of that down. On the good assumptions, I write down, I know I can do this because I've done it in the past. Basically, what evidence has been presented to you that will move you in the direction of you believing that you can do something, right? Because the only way you believe something is through evidence. That's something that I believe strongly. You don't just pluck belief or pluck confidence out of the sky. You have to evidence that. And as soon as you evidence it and you realise it, you're like, oh, actually, I can do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then you carry on doing it.
Yeah.
So then what assumptions am I making? You kind of go forward with that. So I'm making the assumption of I can't do this because I don't have an Instagram following. Okay, is that a good assumption or a bad assumption? It's a bad assumption. Is that a helpful assumption? Yes or no? No. Okay, how can I reframe that assumption to make it a positive one?
Okay.
Even though I don't have a large following, I've got an engaged following. I've got a few people that continuously send me DMs. I've got a few people that continuously like and comment and say things. Okay, what can you do with that? And now, even though I've made the assumption that having a large following is necessary, I've realised that it's actually not necessary.
Yeah. Just
because of the way that I reframed that assumption. And that's another thing that I consistently do, but then I also do in split seconds. So before I start this podcast, there's certain times, so a minute ago, I was just filming some CTAs and it took me a fucking hour. It took me an hour.
It gets like that sometimes though.
15-second snippet.
Yeah.
15 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, comment, subscribe, all of that shit.
Yeah.
It took me an hour. And during that hour, consistently, I kept saying to myself, why can't you do this?
Wow.
Why can't you do this? What is it? Why is this taking so long?
Why does it take so long?
And essentially I was beating myself up, right? Which is why I continuously messed up.
Absolutely.
See, by leading up to the end of that 45 minutes, or I think one of my team member turned around and was like, yeah, it's only been 45 minutes. And I turned around and was just like, that wasn't helpful. However, it was actually very helpful because him saying that triggered me to say to myself, Aahliyah, what assumption are you making right now why you can't say this in the camera in 15 seconds? The assumption that I'm making is I sound beggy. Are you begging though? No. Is that a helpful assumption? No. Why are you doing this? Because if I don't do this, I'm not going to get my message out there. If I don't do this, people that need this information are not going to receive the information. Okay, how am I reframing this context?
Right.
And that second, I mean, probably took me about 3 seconds to come up with all of that in my head and kind of essentially talk myself out of making those bad assumptions. The assumption of, okay, what's the most helpful assumption? The assumption is, if I do this, I've got my guest sitting outside and I can carry on with the day and I can do an actual conversation and get real context and real meat from and I'm just engrossed in this conversation.
Yeah.
If I carry on, I'm not gonna make it. I'm gonna keep beating myself up. It's not gonna be nice. Okay. The assumption is I can do this.
Right.
The assumption is it's just 15 seconds. The assumption is if I don't do this, people aren't gonna see this message. And the message is important.
I love that. I'm going to start using that. Definitely. Yeah.
Done it. Just like that.
So good.
Right? And yeah, that is those two tasks, good assumptions, bad assumptions, and if I don't do it and if I do it, what happens? Those two tasks, paramount in changing people's lives. Yeah. And doing that consistently, not just once a year.
Not just once. Consistent. And
to be fair, you're supposed to be looking at your goals, apparently, every single day.
Really?
Every single day.
Maybe I'm behind then.
If you look at your goals, every single day. This is, I think Jim Rohn said this. I can't remember, so don't quote me on that one. But every single day, you should be thinking about your goals and you should be writing down your most important goals. Every day.
But then, you know how you were saying before that you reverse engineer your goals? That's exactly what I do. Yeah. So I do exactly the same. And I taught this to my, again, ladies on the program, like any hacks, tips, whatever I give, because I'm like, listen, we all need to win. We all need to do better. So let's make it happen. But that's what I do. I have my big general goals, like, I want to make £1 million, whatever. Then I'll split them up into different sections of my life. So I have my business goals, even my marriage goals, my family, friends. I'm so anal, like I split them all up into different things. And then I split those up even further into the months across the year. So I know every quarter. So like January to March, and then et cetera, et cetera. But then what that does mean is that because I look at them every quarter, I then, because I have a daily to-do list, because boy, there's too much going on and I'm sure you do the same, too much going on for even one person for me to stay on top of it all. So I have to have a daily to-do list, and all of those daily to-do lists are directly connected to those broken down goals, which are directly connected to the big, massive goal. So in a way, I think we kind of do, but just not necessarily looking at it as like the big, massive goal, you know?
No, but see, that's the thing. When you reverse engineer, you get your daily goals. Yeah. If you reverse engineer.
It's true. If you don't, you're just like, I want to make £1 million. That's great, but how?
Yeah. And then and the context of you being able to break down the goal of £1 million is actually very easy. Yeah. Because all you're doing is, okay, cool. When do you want to make the £1 million by? 1 year. Fine. Yeah. Break $1 million down by 12 months. Break 12 months.
We literally just did this activity last week in the past. Yeah. Because we're in the business and finance aspect now. And that's how I've always done it, because $1 million sounds like, so for example, one of my goals, 2.5 million. People might think it's wild. That's even small. But 2.5 million is my goal for the next year, right? And literally, if you break it down in 12 months, it's about 300 and something thousand. Then you break that down into weeks, and then you break that down per day. So how much do I need to be making per day? About 1,769, something like that. But 1,769 sounds so much doable than 2.5 million, because you're thinking 2.5, where, how? So now I just think, okay, these different things that I'm doing, I need to be making sure that I'm making X amount every single day. I'm not there by far, but I need to be making X amount to make it make sense. But that whole reverse engineering thing, I use it for everything. And
it's gold.
Is gold, and people don't use that, and that's why sometimes I think people get overwhelmed or run away, or like, oh, but my goal is too big. Then break it down.
Or they don't even make a goal that's big because it's just too.
Because they're like, it's just too much. It sounds too scary. They're intimidated, by it, or even on the opposite, they're intimidated or afraid that they might actually do it.
Yeah.
And they don't know what's going to happen.
That's a big thing.
Yeah, fear of success is real.
Yeah.
It's very, very real. And I think like we spoke about this before, but even that connects to like part of, I think, even myself for a long time, just sabotaging myself because I was so afraid of, oh my gosh, things are happening. People expect things from me. Oh my gosh, it's sabotage. Like that was me for a long time. And I had to have a conversation with myself and be like, this is what you prayed for. This is what you wanted. This is what you were praying to God, crying in your room, talking about, God, please make a way. And you're there doing 3-day fasting and prayer. And so now it's happening. You want to now sabotage yourself. But I realized that I was afraid of success because one of the things that is very real and people should understand is that with success does come more responsibility. I said it before. Now as we're building now, I've got a team that I have to pay. So now if things are not going right with me, even recently, one thing about me, I'm so honest about my journey. Like even recently, we had like 3 clients. I came back from holiday. Yeah, imagine this. Going on holiday, was in Morocco, living my best life with my husband, doing up. Yeah, on holiday, 10 days, best life. I came back, one after the other. Clients were like, yeah, so we've decided that we're going to wrap up our contracts with you guys. We really loved working with you, but we're done. 1 happened, then 2, then 3. 3 clients back to back were all like, we're going to go. That's a massive chunk of money. I have a team. So I had to have some really hard conversations with people and be like, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to let you go. I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to bring your contract to an end because we weren't making as much and we're not currently making as much money as we were a couple of months ago. And so now I have to go back to, all right, we need to bring more clients through the door. Part of it was mistakes that I made. We should have really prepared in advance already, but I didn't. I got comfortable, which happens. But now I'm in a place where I've had to tell some people, can you imagine telling people who have their own bills, their own responsibilities, things, but having to be the person that tells them, I'm so sorry, but we just don't have the money to pay you. Yeah. It is more responsibility. And I think people are afraid of that. And I was afraid of that for a long time. Rightly so. Because who the hell wants to do that? Who the hell wants to be the person that's telling someone, oh yeah, we can't pay you no more, so sorry. I know that you literally gave up your other job so that you can come here, but now I'm basically telling you that it was for nothing. Not that it was, but that's how sometimes we process it. So, I think a lot of it is knowing that, yeah, you're going to have some tough stuff that you're going to have to go through. And that is scary to some people. And so people feel like, yeah, do you know what? Success, yeah, I don't even want it because it's the other stuff. It's the responsibility that comes with it. And I think me and my husband talk about this all the time about how we're in a generation right now where everyone wants the glory, but they don't want the process nor the responsibility. Everyone wants I'm on Instagram, I've got a 6-figure business. Oh, look at my new G-Wagon. G-Wagon's my dream car, by the way.
Oh my God, so is mine.
Is it? This is why. We're just meant to be. G-Wagon is...
The car.
It's just so beautiful, isn't it? Listen, I even said, I've already got names for them. I'm going to have black and white, Bonnie and Clyde. Those are my... Listen, I speak everything, right? Life and death is in the power of the tongue. You need to speak what you want. So I already said I'm going to have 2 G-Wagons, black and white. And someone even asked me one time, why do you want to have 2? What's the point? I said, because I can. Like, that was my answer. I was like, because I can. Why not?
In the black one, left
in the white one. But no, like literally G-Wagon is my like all-time dream car. And I don't know why the hell I brought that up. What was I even saying? See how it threw me off? Like the G-Wagon like completely threw me off because I'm so excited. But no, all in all, I just know that success can be so scary and people will run away from it because it's easier for them to say, okay, yeah, I want all of this. Oh, that's what I was talking about. People want the glory,
but not
the process, not the work, not the responsibility. Yeah. Right? You want to be able to put on Instagram, look at my new G-Wagon, look at these bags that I have, look at all this amazing stuff. But then they don't want to go through that process that it takes. And yes, I know some people cut corners. Yes, I know some people do things that they maybe shouldn't. Yes, I know. right? But there's also a lot of people who have grafted and who have done the work and who now carry the weight of responsibility that comes with being able to drive 2 different G-Wagons or being able to run a business where you're not getting any sleep and you've got a team. Like, I feel like I even went through a period where the calm before the storm, where things, we were plain sailing. I think that's why I got comfortable, because things were going really well. So we're making money, we finally hit the 6 figures mark, things were going really, really well, all of that good stuff. And then all of a sudden now this happened, and now we're in a place where we're having to rebuild again, right? But yeah, all in all, it's responsibility, and not everyone is up for it.
No,
you know?
not at all.
But yeah.
Do you know what, Nissy? Honestly, I feel like we need to do this again.
Listen, I feel like I could talk to you forever.
The synergy, we be crying and shit.
As in, girl, you should have put a precursor in the email. They may be tears. Oh God,
I think I might do that for the next one.
Literally, let them know, because I didn't expect it, but
I appreciate you for coming down and being so authentic and being so truthful.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Honestly, there's so much more that I want to delve into and so much more that I want to ask you. However, for ease of viewership, I keep these episodes to about an hour 15, very tops.
I feel you.
But that doesn't mean to say that we can't do this again.
Absolutely,
because what I do want to delve into for the next one is NT media, right? NT media and what that means. Because there's a lot of people that want to be able to start creative agencies.
Right, absolutely.
And what does starting a creative agency actually mean? When you have other people's businesses and you have other people's lives in your hands. Not just employees. Right?
Yeah.
Your employees are one thing. The people that's working with you is one thing. But when you have clients' livelihoods in your hands, because think of any kind of media agency, that media, you creating that media is essentially where that company is getting their money from. Right?
Absolutely.
Like advertising, social media, whatever it is. Like if you have an agency and you are looking to, I don't know, be someone in music and you're trying to build a music agency or whatever it is.
Right.
Those musicians, you say you're managing musicians, those musicians are underneath your wing.
Yeah.
If you mess up, they mess up.
If you mess up, that's their future.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like you're building people's social media profiles, which is their some people's livelihoods, which
absolutely.
Which is crazy. And I also want to delve into what you think about Web3.
Listen, please do. We may have to do this conversation like definitely later, because I barely know about Web3, and I know you've been talking about it so much. So I've been like, I need you to tell me like where it's at, what we're doing, because I need to make sure that I'm ahead of what's happening and what's coming.
Precisely.
So
you see that energy?
Yeah.
That's exactly why one of the things that I definitely want to do with this podcast is introduce the idea of Web3 a little bit more to the masses, because at this point in time, if we don't have women, if we don't have black people, if we don't have Asian people, if we don't have ethnic minorities building the technology, we're going to have the same issues that we currently have with code bias and this and that and all the things that everyone has issues with social media.
Right.
To not have those issues the next 10, 15 years for our children, 20 years for our children, we have to be a part of the building process, which is now. It's not when it already comes into place and everyone's doing NFTs and everyone's doing metaverse and everyone's doing... It's not when it's done. You step into it, right?
No, it has to be now.
You have to do it now. So that's one thing that I'm essentially speaking a little bit more about.
No, I've seen you talk about it quite a bit, and I was like, I need to ask her. I was like, when I see her, it's even good that you brought it up, because I was like, when I see her, I need to ask her about it, because I think, again, because when you're so in what you are doing, to even build capacity in your brain to try and open up space for something else can be a lot in itself. So, if I can learn from the best, listen, I'm come at your feet and be like, Aaliyah, please teach me.
Girl.
Teach me, girl, teach me.
I got you. You'll be teaching me 1 or 2 things about social media as well.
Listen,
anyway,
absolutely. I'm down, man. I'm down.
But in terms of you just being a massive motivator and somebody that has inspired me since I've known you, like you show up. right?
Wow,
And I
thank you.
appreciate the fact that you show up, because it does a lot for the people that's watching.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, so I commend you for that, number one.
Thank you.
Want to thank you, number two.
Thank you so much.
For being here with me.
I loved it.
And just to kind of wrap up, like, I think the biggest takeaway that I've had from this conversation is, regardless of the fact that you was able to go to Cambridge and you had that amazing opportunity,
Right.
the lessons you learnt from that coincides with the lessons that I learnt from home.
Right.
Which basically now means that anybody, academic or not, creative or not, from any background, right, regardless of circumstance and situation, can learn the exact same principles of life.
Yeah.
And those principles of life is what's going to propel you. Yeah, those life lessons is what's going to make the biggest difference. So I am like, that is a key takeaway, because it just means anyone can do this.
Absolutely. And can I just say, I know that, sorry, we're wrapping up. The final thing that I'm going to say anyway is, and I think that is why I do what I do, especially with the power class. The power class was my first baby. I started in 2018. Especially what I do with women and the power class, because what I found, and we spoke about this off camera, what I was saying, the reason why I even started the power class was because you would have conversations with guys, and it was like they knew this, like they had like guys just have this energy where it's like they just know, like there's nothing I can't do. And obviously there's going to be some that will obviously struggle with self-esteem and confidence, etc. But for the most part, for the majority, you speak to guys and they're just so ready and willing. And then you have women who I would speak to who had sometimes, you know, just to say, not that it was all women, but sometimes with double the skills, double the capability, double the potential, double the stuff that is needed to be the woman that they wanted to be, whether it be, again, you know, whether you be a woman that you want to be a stay-at-home mum. Okay, cool. Be the best stay-at-home mum that you can be for your kids. Whether you be a woman who decides that wants to run 5 businesses and you want to smash that, and you want to, or work for a FTSE 500, whatever space you're in, doing that to a level of excellence and a level where you can be proud of yourself was almost like, oh no, I don't think I can do that because I don't have what it takes. There was always this lack of confidence. And that's why the power class was so important, to remind women that it doesn't matter where you started from. Just like what you just said now, it doesn't matter the skills you did or didn't have. They can be learned, but you also have to give yourself the space to want and to go after the things that you need to learn, right? But yeah, that's literally why I started the power class. So women can be reminded, you can do this. I know that sometimes society, the world, culture, sometimes even religion, unfortunately, because of how it's been manipulated and taken, right? Religion sometimes makes you feel like, oh, because as a woman, I have to be humble, I have to be this, I have to be that. Not knowing that, yes, you can be humble, but you can be great. Humility doesn't mean making yourself quiet. It just means that you don't have to pretend to be something that you're not in the face of others to prove a point. I can be quietly humble, but still quietly great. Do you know what I mean? But that's why I started the power class in the first place. But talking of the power class,
your brunch,
my brunch that's coming up, because I had to make sure I throw it in there.
Do you know what?
I
remember
plug.
as you started talking, I was like,
yeah,
the brunch is coming up.
Yes, it's happening on the 3rd of September. 2022. It is going to be amazing. I've done workshops and power classes before, but never just something where I just want women to come together and vibe. Like, you know, there's going to be a panel where we're going to be talking about a number of different things. There's going to be women from different industries. So not just, you know, content creation or the creative industry per se, but women who are professionals, some who are in business, an amazing panel of some great women who are going to be releasing like who they are as we go along over the weeks. But aside from that, there's going to be food, drinks. We've got a DJ on the night as well. And I literally just wanted it to be maybe an hour, 2 hours of talking and sharing, and the rest to just be connecting, networking, being in the room with like-minded women who all are thinking about the future and thinking bigger than themselves. This is not just about me. This is for generations to come. This is for my children, my children's children. So yeah, 3rd of September, I invite all my ladies to come. By the time people see this, tickets will probably be officially out. Yeah. They definitely should be, actually, because they go live tonight. So yeah, I want people to come to enjoy, and it's open to everybody and anybody. It's happening in London. So if you are willing, even if you're outside of London and you're willing to come, fly in, drive in, train in, or whatever you're gonna do, but come and join us. It's gonna be amazing.
Well, I will most definitely be making it.
Oh, listen, I already told you, you've already got an invite automatically, so that is even fine. You have to be there. So yeah, it's gonna be really, really good.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again, Nissy.
Thank you so much.
Love you loads.
Thank you. Love you always.
Wish you the well.
Thank you. You too.
Wish you the well.
Wish you well. It's all right. It was an emotional time. Don't worry.
Wish you the world.
Oh, I love that.
Oh,
yeah, well, you too. I wish you the world too. That's wicked. I love that. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Thank you.
You was just listening to the Promisingpreneur podcast. I am Aahliyah Amerat, and thank you so much for listening all the way through. Don't forget to click subscribe and share to at least one person, because that's the only thing that's going to fuel us to carry on.